Alright, welcome to the channel, welcome to the video. This video is going to be all about rust. So, as you can see behind me here, I've got my 2006 Duramax stripped down almost as far as it's going to go. This was meant to be a paint job / rust mitigation. It's turning out to be a lot of rust mitigation. This truck did spend about 10 years of its life in British Columbia, which is kind of always raining or snowing, and you know, fair bit of salt on it. So the time it was in Alberta, which is where it is now, it's actually been okay. So it's kind of a half and half in a 17-year-old truck. I'll give you kind of just a little look around here and what kind of some of the rust looks like. Basically, there is some flaky surface rust, but there's nowhere that I've found so far where it's like, oh my God, the frame has got a hole in it. The cross members in the rear are good, which is really a blessing. The frame is really good throughout. It's almost completely solid. Really where I'm getting the rust problems are things like the front fenders. They're rusted right through in a couple places that were conveniently hidden by the arches, the wheel arches. The bed itself had a reasonable amount of rust, but not too much on the bottom. And you know, little things like the brake lines, the fuel lines, the fuel sending unit would look pretty bad. This spare tire, right? Like, so there are a lot of places where it's got rust, and this video is going to be about going after the rust. I'm going to be taking kind of a multi-prong approach. First of all is sandblasting. So I will show you the parts that I just completed sandblasting. I sandblast as many things as I can just to completely take the rust off before I seal and treat them. The second is going to be scaling of the frame with my air scaler, which I don't happen to have right handy here, but you'll see a lot of that in the video. Some grinding, some repairs I got the rockers and things like that I got to put in, and then ultimately treating the rust. So either that's going to be treating with my I have a special rust spray that I'll link the video here from Just a Hand. It was just a great video learning about like kind of what causes rust and what eats rust, and kind of a low budget way of repairing that, which I'll talk about. And then sealing, right? And so we have a couple different options for that. Some Noxudol, some DOM 16, which is very similar to POR 15, but it's the Canadian bootleg version of it. And some gravel guard and probably some rhino liner. So there's gonna be a mixture of things, different primers and stuff. I'm trying to talk about that, but basically this video is all about rust. So if you're trying to cure the rust on your truck, hopefully I can show you what to do or not to do. So let's get to it.
All right, here I am with the needle scaler, working on the very back of the truck. Just gives you an idea of what I'm going to be dealing with here for the rest of this video. You'll notice that I have an air needle that's actually mounted to an air hammer or an air chisel. This is the best way to do it because you can really put more force as opposed to the ones that are more cylindrical. So I'd recommend using a scaler like this one, and it can also double as an air hammer. And you can also just put the chisel end on it too, and it actually does a similar job. So you kind of mix and match throughout. Basically, just kind of working through, give you a little bit of the sound I was dealing with and the vibrations you can imagine. This is substantially reduced in the volume. But you just kind of keep hammering away on it. And here you get a nice view of kind of what it looks like as you take the scale off. It almost comes off on like these little sheets. And this is what it looks like when it's been done. And then here you can see where I kind of stopped where I couldn't reach any further. And that's the effect that you're looking for. So really you just kind of keep at it and you work at it. Hearing protection is good, some eye protection of course, and I just kind of keep working through it. I was fortunate throughout that I didn't find any areas where it punched through, at least not on the frame. I did find some spots on the rocker panels and on the fenders, as you'll see, that did punch through. This was really the worst part of it because you had to lay underneath, and so you had to get something on your face, you had to get something on your ears, you needed to get light down there, you needed to roll around, you're rolling on your air hose. This was just gross. There's no real other way to describe it than this is gross. And I just had to kind of get through it. Kind of wish I'd done this on the lift after all was said and done.
So one of the quick things I'm fixing here is the fifth wheel brackets or rails in my truck are mounted
to the frame via a couple of brackets. Now these brackets I sandblasted, so here you can see them here. There's one of those on each side. However, when they attach to the truck, you can't actually reach the inside. And so you kind of have to feed a bolt to a hole, and it has like a friction fit. Anyway, it really didn't work, and they ended up becoming loose. So what I'm doing is I'm actually welding in some proper brackets now that I have the box off. So what you can see here is this is where it goes. And I've already welded them to some little plates that I'm going to insert from the inside and then weld through those 4 holes. And so I'll go show you what those little plates look like right now. I put a bunch of weld through primer on them just so they don't rust in the back end, but that's what the plates look like. They're kind of hot right now. And it just so happens that they're different thicknesses on one side because the frame is double walled right at that one point. So there's been a lot of screwing around to get these just right. And so I'm going to weld them into place, and then when I do put on those brackets later, it's literally just pop them on, tighten them down, done.
So here you can see the bracket, and I've drilled the 4 holes where I'm going to do the spot welds, and I'll fit the bracket in from the back. And so you can't really tell, but there's another the beam is boxed back there, so you can't actually get in directly. And then I'll just put this nut on to hold it in place temporarily, and then start doing the welds. So this doesn't have to be invincible, because once the pressure's on it, it will stay in place. So really it's just to get this on there and fastened. And here I'm test fitting it, and ultimately I'm pretty happy with how this turned out. So here's how I fixed the front fenders. Turns out from Partify you can buy complete replaced fenders, primed, ready to go, for about $250. I actually found one side on Amazon and the other side on Partify, but both were in a similar price range, and shipped very quickly and came packaged tremendously well, like epically well. And these things were basically flawless. And just to compare what the old one looks like compared to the new one, obviously it's going to save me a lot of effort not having to totally rebuild the bottom of these things. Okay, another total sidebar. Have you ever had the issue where you wish you had an air compressor in your truck? I have the load leveling airbags in the back, and I have to always fill them by hand. I usually carry this little blue compressor everywhere I go. And I just had this crazy idea. It's like, what if I could rip this thing into pieces and actually build it into the truck? So that's what I'm doing here. As you can see, I removed the actual pump portion. This is just the air tank. And I'm fabricating a couple of brackets so I can mount it on the back of the truck, as you can see here. Crazy idea, but these are the types of things that kind of keep me interested in these projects. And I did take a whole bunch of measurements and determined that it would sit here and not actually hit the rear differential. And you know, if it did, it basically means the airbags were totally flattened. So I think it's pretty safe here, and there's enough clearance on the top for the bed to sit on top of this. So that's kind of what it looks like. I had to build it such that I could actually remove it from the rails with the bed in place, and so that's why it's a little bit convoluted. And then as for the pump itself, I threaded a bunch of holes here on the side of the frame, and I'm going to be able to mount the actual pump portion inside the frame to kind of keep it out of the elements and keep it safe. Here's a little mounting feet. These all came with the compressor, so this is basically a free project as far as I'm concerned, versus a 12-volt pump, which can be anywhere from $500 to $1,000. So this was free. I'm just going to have to also mount a 120-volt inverter in there, which I was going to do anyway so I could run my trackers. So, and now I'm working on removing the fuel and the brake lines. I don't really go into a lot of focus here. There's some really good videos on replacing your brake and fuel lines on YouTube already. I'm just moving these out now so that I can apply the rust prevention product here next. So that's what I'm kind of doing here. and then trying to pull the fuel lines out as well. I decided these needed to be replaced, especially the brake lines. But if I'm going to do the brake, I figured I may as well do the fuel lines and then the fuel cooler and so on in future videos. But for now, I'm just pulling them all out, and I'm using these cutters to do it. All right, so I'm finally at the point now where the rust is mostly off the frame now. You can, and on my previous Jeep project, I actually powder coated the frame, which means sandblasting, getting everything off of it. It just wasn't feasible here because I'm working inside the garage, and I can't use the truck to haul the truck, so to speak. So I decided I'm just going to take it down as much as I can with the air needler, which you saw, as well as a little bit of grinding with wire wheels. So there's still rust embedded in the finish, but it's not like all the heavy rust, all the flake off rust has been removed. So next I want to treat the frame. So what I'm going to use to treat the frame is a product I've used before. It's called Noxudol. Now this stuff is really hard to find. It's out of Sweden, and it's outside of their website, there's really not a lot of reviews on it. So I've used this. This will be my second time using this. This stuff, the 300 is called. This is for treating your frame and your undercarriage, kind of anywhere you can get at. You can put it on with, I think it's called a shots gun or a shoots gun, I can't remember. This kind of goes into there, screw it on, and then you just spray it. Now, the 700, this is what's called a cavity wax. So this one's black. This one's kind of a snotty colored, and kind of the color of this too, actually, from using it before. And so this one is meant to go inside of the frame, or inside of cavities, hence the term cavity wax. And it also has really high seeping qualities. So basically, it means from where you spray it, it will always seep and fill in holes. So for instance, maybe you put this on your frame and then a rock hits it and displaces it, it will seep back into place. And so this one has a lower kind of seeping coefficient, if you will. This one has a higher one. So you spray this inside the places you can't get to, and it'll find its ways into all the nooks and crannies, right? So that's the idea. So for this one, you mostly want to use the end tip on here for the sprayer. In the past, I've had a hard time spraying these. They don't seem to want to come out of the gun, partly because I have a really cheap gun. You can get hundreds of dollars worth of guns. This is like a $15 gun. But also, I don't think I ever heated it before, and it is obviously winter here, so I have been heating this stuff kind of just in front of the outlet vents on my furnace to get it warmed up. Now, the other option is you can also paint it on, which is what I did with my Jeep for the most part, and these are just really nice looking dollar store paintbrushes for some reason. And so I'm basically going to paint that on with that, or I'm also going to use these foam rollers. So just going to kind of get it everywhere it needs to go. I need this to cure for 7 days before I actually start putting my brake lines and my fuel lines back in. This stuff is sticky and gross, and obviously this stuff is black. It gets on everything. So if you can let it cure first, it's going to work out a lot better for you, and then you can actually work with the vehicle afterwards. Now, why did I choose this over some other products? So originally I was looking at like a POR 15. There's a DOM 16 it's called, which is a Canadian version of it. I actually purchased some of that, but ultimately I talked to an old friend of mine, a guy I actually met sort of one of my previous forums. His name is Dennis Wood. And so Dennis, he's like, if you Google Noxudol, 9 times out of 10 you'll find him. He posts under the name Woody or Denwood. And he is the biggest advocate for this stuff. He lives in Thunder Bay, Ontario, where they get a lot of salt on the roads, and this stuff just performs the best. And he's tried everything, and this is just simply the best. And if you actually start to really dig into this, you see this is what a lot of the manufacturers use. I think it's Isuzu, Honda, and Toyota. Like when they have to do frame repairs and patches due to rust, they treat with this when they're done. So this stuff will actively kill rust. So even though I have some rust on the frame, you spray this stuff on, it'll actually kill it over time. So I don't have to use my de-rust phosphoric acid spray because this stuff will do the job. So the DOM 16, it says it bonds to rust. So it says it'll do kind of the same thing. But the reviews on that stuff is just, and POR 15 is just pretty poor. Whereas I've used this stuff before, I know it really works. I know Woody says it really works, and I trust him. So I'm just going to apply this straight over top of the steel, and we're going to check back in a few years and see how it does. But I think anything's better than doing nothing at this point. And so this is what I'm going to put on all the chassis pieces.
And then this will be what I'm putting in all the cavities. I have a bunch more of this that I've ordered from my buddy Mike in Utah. He actually is shipping this up here for me, and it's going on a tour up the coast of California, thanks USPS. So I got a couple old cans here that I'm going to use first, and you know, stay tuned and we'll see how it works out. So it was just kind of a film on top of the goop. This isn't too bad actually. Just like your chai tea. That's looking a lot better. Okay. Pour some of that in there. It's really just like a thick paint. And a really heavy gear oil consistency. So this stuff is apparently non-toxic. Like, you don't want to eat it. There's no petroleum in it, even though it looks like oil. It's not. They have some versions that do have petroleum products in it. So I'm just working with the 300 and the 700, but they do have like 930 and 1100, and I don't know exactly what those things mean, but okay, brush. You're gonna get a workout today. Went to school. Just like paint. So the reason I'm applying it with the brush is I don't want it all over everything. Like, I don't really want it covering all these wire harnesses and stuff like that. I just want it on the frame. And later, if I have enough, I'm going to do the bottom of the cab and the bottom of the box, potentially. So the nice thing about this is it does have some seeping or creeping capabilities, so if you get it close to like some holes and stuff like that, it will tend to find its way into the little crevices and things like that.
So time to speed things up. Basically, I'm applying this everywhere onto the frame, any of the cross members. These are also the part of the suspension here, the torsion axles. Sure, why not? You know, if it's steel, this stuff will work. Hell, if it's rubber, it's not really going to hurt anything. This stuff can almost go on anything. But putting it on the brush was kind of painful. It was a little better at saving the product, so if you wanted to stretch it and make it last, the brush is probably the better technique. And it doesn't make a complete mess of your shop, which was kind of nice. Makes a bit of a mess of yourself, but especially if you touch this stuff. It does take about a week to set up, and then it turns into a much nicer product. It's almost like a mushy sort of electrical tape, and if you really mush it, it kind of will rub on your finger a little bit. But basically just applying this all over the frame. I started doing this side first because I have to run the lines up and down this side first, so I wanted it to cure first so I could do that. But you know, not really bad. It's basically acts like a thick paint. Goes on pretty nicely, and a little goes a long way. So now I'm switching from the brush over to the spray canister with the Schutz gun here. This actually ends up working pretty well, and I do finish the rest of the job this way. I do think it uses a bit more product, but it is a lot easier, and it gets into a lot of the little nooks and crannies that you can't otherwise get into with the brush as well. I think I'm spraying around 80 psi here, and of course it does spray all over the shop, so that's the downside. And for about a week you get this sticky stuff all over your shoes, which is a bit annoying. I do end up applying it a bit thick here, but that doesn't really hurt anything. And since I'm never be able to do this again in here or reapply it, I'm just gonna use as much as I can and make sure it does a good job and get the whole thing coated.
All right, so that video really ended up being a hodgepodge of things. Ultimately, the most work for me was descaling the rust that was over many days. You know, when I could get in the time, it wasn't fun. You know, I had to crawl under there. You know, show you a picture of my getup here. You know, you needed the face shield. In some cases, you needed a mask for breathing. You needed light, and so you have headlamps, and you know, it's just, and you're rolling around in old rust and chipped off paint. So it wasn't a whole lot of fun, and it took a lot of time and vibrated the hell out of your hands. And anyway, I do have it done, and it culminated with the application of the Noxudol. Here's one of the cans, kind of what it looks like when you're done using it. Honestly, to do the whole frame, I was at about, I guess it was 4 cans for the truck. And I applied the first one by brush, as you saw, and then the last one by sort of a spray with I think it's called a Schlutz gun. In fact, I have it right here. This is the Schlutz gun here. This is by far the way to go. It gets messy. You can see on my table here, I sprayed some pieces, and it's goopy, right? But I did get the whole frame done, particularly the back of the truck, the underside of the truck. I didn't do the underside of the cab yet. That's something I can do later once the truck's back together. You know, once you spray everything black, you can't see anything. It's this sort of weird effect. And I still have some work to do down there with fuel lines and brake lines, and you know, reinstalling fuel tanks and so on. So I just thought, you know what, I'm gonna wait till all that's done before I truly goop up the rest down there, if it's even necessary. The underside of the cab wasn't in too bad a shape, but the underside of the rockers is. And so as I go into my next videos, it's going to be fixing up those rockers, and then, you know, repainting them and then treating them with the Noxudol, so that this never happens again. So anyway, I am pretty happy with this stuff. It's really hard to get. I had to kind of get it out of the US. They don't ship it to Canada, so I had to get an intermediary to do that. So thanks, Mike. And yeah, it's here after its trip through California. Anyway, yeah, this seems like a logical place to stop. I've pretty much completed all the work that I want to do on the truck. Got my air compressor mounted. It's just, you know, there's a lot of stuff. I mean, this was probably 6 weeks of work just doing this rust mitigation and little odd jobs and everything. So from here, I'm going to be moving forward into the body work. Like I said, working on the rockers, and then starting to do some of the auto body work on all the other panels and pieces. So it's just about New Year's here at the end of 2023, beginning of 2024. I want to have the truck on the road in April. It's going to be a tall task, but that's nonetheless what I'm aiming for. So otherwise, there won't be much of a boating season this year. So anyway, thanks for tuning in. Hopefully you learned a little bit something about mitigating rust, and see you in the next video. Thank you.